Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to continue with my discussion of Andrei Tarkovsky and his films. As you've seen in previous videos, I'm slowly working my way through his filmography. And the third movie that I've seen of Tarkovsky's is The Mirror from 1975. I'm actually going off of a BFI article from a few years ago about an entry point into Tarkovsky's work. So I started off with Stalker, which was from 1979, Solaris from 1972, and then I'm going to be talking today about The Mirror, or Mirror, from 1975. I should say at the beginning here too, I'm not an expert in Tarkovsky. These are first watches for me. I am watching these movies on the Criterion channel, so I have a subscription to the Criterion channel, and I'm watching some of the supplements, not all of the supplements, on the Criterion channel. And just to give you a little bit about my viewing experience for this latest film, I did last night watch the film in the middle of the night, as it turns out, from 12 to about 2. The movie's a little bit shorter than the other films that I've watched already, but that's when I watched the movie, and I was very much engaged in the movie at that time. So I don't know what time you generally watch movies, but as I've mentioned in the previous videos, I'm having a lot of difficulty sleeping lately. So sometimes watching these movies and continuing with my study of Tarkovsky at these times really helps. It also helps that the theme of the movie is more of a dreamlike theme. And so if you have not seen The Mirror before, please, and you don't want to be spoiled, I will be talking a little bit about the plot and about some elements that I enjoy in the movie. If you would rather not be spoiled, you can turn off the video and just come back to it later. The first thing I want to talk about briefly is the structure of the film. It's basically what they call a nonlinear narrative, meaning that there are many different sequences that represent the protagonist's mind in this case, and it happens to be a character who is looking back on his life in many ways. And that's the basics of the story in a very simplistic way. Again, these films, I feel like with Tarkovsky's filmography, you can watch these films over and over again and study them and find new things in them. But these are just my first impressions that I want to share with you. And I'm actually making these videos so that I can remember what my first impressions are after watching these movies, which I'm sure I will be watching more and more over the years. These are movies, to me anyway, that stay with you for a long time. So, you might go to the theater and see a comedy movie, and you come out and you realize you had a few laughs, and then you forget about the movie. These movies really stay with me. The images in the movies stay with me. So I'm sure that I'll be studying them for weeks, months, years to come. So let me just talk a little bit about the beginning of the movie. I really enjoyed the beginning of the movie, which is in color. Again, this particular movie goes from color to black and white to sepia tones, and that's the basic color palette of the movie. In the beginning, as I mentioned before, there's a nature scene, and so which I really enjoy, and I think Tarkovsky does a great job at these things. It's these nature scenes that I really enjoy in the movie. Of course, I'm enjoying many other things about the movie too, but it is one of my favorite parts. So in the beginning, there is a woman who you don't know, but it's basically the mother of the protagonist in the beginning, a younger version of the mom. Sitting on a fence, and there's a person, a doctor, that comes to her, and they begin to talk briefly, and it's just a really beautiful scene in the beginning of the movie. You're not quite sure what to do or how to interpret it yet, just getting involved in the movie. And that's the other thing too about The Mirror in particular. You really have to let yourself go and let Tarkovsky take you on this journey, which in many cases can be a little bit confusing. I'm glad that I started off with Stalker and then went to Solaris and then to The Mirror. I feel like if I had started with The Mirror, I might be very confused or really not appreciate what he's trying to do here. But there is a lot of dialogue related to nature and how nature perhaps has some form of intelligence that we do not have, which I really believe, and which you can see many examples of around the world. And so this character of the doctor, talks about that briefly in the beginning. So you get the sense of the same types of themes that I've been seeing in some of the other movies, that nature is something that we really don't fully understand and that we perhaps cannot understand as humans. There's so many things we do not understand and cannot control. I feel like in the beginning too, the doctor references Chekhov, which I believe to be Anton Chekhov, who is a playwright who was also a doctor. So I found that rather interesting, and maybe I got that interpretation wrong, but that's the way I felt about it. And Chekhov plays are typically filled with tragedy and comedy at the same time. They're really mixing those two elements in a Chekhov play. So I thought that was an interesting way to open up the movie. There's also a scene in which, when the doctor is leaving, a gust of wind blows over the grass, and it's really beautiful in the beginning of the movie to see that. You really get the sense of the intelligence, the unpredictability of nature, and really the magnificence of it. So I really enjoyed those elements. The other thing you see too, which I've seen with all the Tarkovsky movies up to this point, is these elements of fire, water, air, earth. And you really see that in this film as well. You see some characters building fires, which we had seen in Stalker and Solaris, meaning to me that, at least the way I interpret it, that humans are fairly primitive when it comes to what's happening on the planet and what's happening around us. Again, this is my interpretation of it, just having seen the movie for the first time. I really feel as though this movie is one of the best films I've seen that represents how memory works and the different compartments. There's many scenes where you see doors, windows, hallways, and things like that, and it really reminded me of my own memory and different compartments in memory. And that's basically the way the film is structured, with this nonlinear narrative where you're seeing scenes that you have to interpret. You're not quite sure how they relate to other scenes, but it's very fascinating, and that's one of the reasons I think it's very rewatchable. But to me, that's the way memory works, and I haven't really seen a film up to this point that demonstrates to me exactly how memory might work. I know from my own memory, I may be thinking about things that are happening now, but then how they relate to, the past, my family, where I grew up, my work life, various, things. And I think this movie does that very well. And the images that Tarkovsky presents you with are just magnificent. In the mirror, you rarely see the protagonist. You might have a point of view shot of the protagonist, but he's rarely seen. There's a couple of moments where you will see his face, either in the past, but I can't remember in the film whether you see him actually in the present. There's one part later in the film that the protagonist is behind a screen and you never really see his face. Obviously, there are mirrors in the film, and so you see reflections also, which are very interesting to look at. There is a younger version of the protagonist who is at one point in the film in a room alone, staring into a mirror. And again, you get this reflection part of memory itself, and the way the characters are remembering different things, how they relate to each other. The protagonist, they happen to choose an actress who plays a younger version of the protagonist's mom, but who is also the same actress that plays his ex-wife. So The Mirror is another example of Tarkovsky at his best with this cinematic poetry. I did want to mention too that I feel like the end of the movie was just amazing. Probably, I would have to say, one of the top 5 endings of a movie that I've ever seen in my life. And I'm not going to spoil it for you, but you really have to experience it. The last 30 seconds to a minute of the film is truly amazing cinema. So that's my first reaction of Andrei Tarkovsky's The Mirror. And looking at the filmography, I am really debating what film to watch next. There was a remark there was a comment made that The Sacrifice is a good movie to watch next. And that's his last film, I believe, but it was mentioned in the comments, and thanks for all the comments too, by the way, that The Sacrifice is a good film, considering that I'm a Bergman fan. But I do have a few more of his films, obviously, to watch. So if you have any recommendations on watch order, let me know in the comments below. If you have a favorite Tarkovsky film, also let me know, or anything that I might have gotten wrong. Maybe I have the wrong impression on this particular film. Again, I feel like I'm going to be watching these films over and over again. I don't have the physical media right now, but these films are definitely on my list for my next Criterion order. The other thing too is that Criterion, I found out recently, is extending their 30% off sale until the end of May. So that's another chance to potentially, if you're a Criterion Collection fan or you enjoy these films, it's another chance to pick up the films and support the company as well. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. If you like this video, click on like. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please subscribe and click on the notification bell so you'll know when I upload a new video. I sincerely hope that everyone is safe and well, and I'll talk to you soon.